I'm actually really curious about the Hugh Jackman thing. Saw that that wasn't today, was it?
Hugh Jackman, what's today?
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so Hugh Jackman has a show that he has been in for the past couple of months. It's about one weekend every month since I think it started in January. It's going to be running through September, October. It's not, I shouldn't say every month. I think it's every other month for one weekend, all at Radio City Music Hall. And it's a curation of his songs. Well, I shouldn't say his songs, but songs that he sings in different productions. So The Music Man and Les Miserables and The Greatest Showman, which is a personal favorite, and some other tunes. Like he comes out and one of the first songs he sings was Oklahoma, which was really great too. And then he sings a lot of like New York songs as well.
Hmm.
So my friends and I, when we actually got upgraded to seats right in the orchestra, we did
Oh,
a
wow.
matinee, which is great. The name of his show is Hugh Jackman Live from New York with Love. And it's playing this weekend at Radio City Music Hall. And then I think he's coming back potentially in May, definitely in June. And if not every month, then every other month for like a Friday show, a Saturday show during the day, and then a Saturday night show, and potentially even a Sunday show. He's just putting his heart and soul into the show. And they have an orchestra and backup singers. And overall, it was fantastic. Everyone was just smiling from ear to ear and clapping along. He sang Sweet Caroline, which got people up on their feet, and then New York, New York. And he sang various songs from Your Greatest Showman, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, slash musicals. Hopefully it comes to Broadway eventually. Overall, it's just his voice is so well developed and he is so incredibly talented. The man is like a triple threat. He can act, he can sing, he can dance. He danced. There was like a jump rope section where him and the four dancers danced to Bye 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 by NSYNC, which was hysterical. And he's just such a great dude also. Just you could tell he's so loved by everyone that works with him and he kept on thanking everyone that was there on stage with him and even those that weren't on stage with him. He has great crowd work and he was just incredibly charismatic. He was maybe like 5 rows ahead of me at one point because he just walked through the aisle and
Yeah.
he performed so incredibly well. He welled up during one of the songs from Les Miserables, and I was just like, it just goes to show this is so meaningful for him that he wanted to put this together and create a show that embodies a lot of like the breadth of his work.
Hmm. He's done a ton. It's funny because, like, a lot of us are familiar with him from the X-Men movies, right? And that was like
Sure.
sort of his introduction to a lot of people. And people kind of forget that he's got a huge, musical theater background.
Right.
And yeah, he's kind of a big deal, and he's done it for a long time. Because I remember um, a lot of people were kind of shocked when was cast in Les Mis because they only knew him from action movies and things like
Right.
that. People weren't seeing him as a theater star, and it was something that's very much in his wheelhouse. So
100%.
yeah.
And he just brings so much emotion and care to his roles. And he played P.T. Barnum and The Greatest Showman, which those songs are just filled with so much emotion themselves too.
Hmm.
And every single song I feel like is a hit in that film. And that's why I can't wait when it does eventually come to Broadway, hopefully in the next 5, 10 years, because I think it's just a very wholesome show that multiple people can connect with. And he's like I could close my eyes and feel like I had just watched the movie. His voice is so powerful and definitely helps. I think even people that are in the worst moods, smile. It's just he deserves this show. And it was, it's funny because this guy's from Australia and he loves New York so much. He's lived in New York, I think, for a while. I believe he has a place here. I've heard from people like they've seen him, like he's just a very humble guy. I know people have said that someone told me within the past couple of months, like they've seen him just ride a city bike across the city.
I think I've heard that too, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, he just seems like a very normal, down to earth
totally.
like guy who just happens to be, you know, handsome and talented. Um,
Handsome, talented, and just all around fabulous.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad. And everyone that was at a show, it wasn't just like one age demographic. Everyone was there. There were young kids, there were people that were in their 50s, 60s, older, women and men that are, 20s, 30s. Like I felt like every decade was, I shouldn't say every decade, but a whole variety of different demographics was present in that room.
Yeah, and I figure, or I feel like he covers a lot of that just by being a star, right? Like, because he is
Mhm.
late 50s. He might even be 60 now.
He's late 50s.
Yeah. So I mean that age group is completely reasonable, right? And
Right.
then, there's our age group who watched him come up in movies and stuff like that. And then there's folks that have just seen him in the last few years. There's people that kind of really caught on to him with like Logan and Deadpool and Wolverine, and then his kind of resurgence into theater recently, The Greatest Showman, Les Mis, and then all the stuff that he's been doing on Broadway. He just did, was it Music Man that he just finished on Broadway?
And Music Man two
Yeah.
years ago,
Yeah.
which he performed one of the songs from it, which is like a classic song.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, he's just so incredibly talented. And yeah, I highly recommend the show for anyone that's in New York or if you're in the tri-state area and want to go into the city for the day. It's worth it. It's totally worth it. And the fact that he's doing matinees and he's offering shows through the fall, get your tickets. And yeah, they were a little pricey, but I was able to get a deal by bidding through the theater app,
Hmm.
which was really great. That's spelled Theat and then R. And that is a way of getting tickets for those who can no longer make a performance, and you can bid to get a good
Hmm.
deal.
Yeah, it's a good way to go. If especially if you're kind of in a position where you can afford to not go. Like if you don't get tickets, you're fine. It's not like you're here for one weekend and you have to get tickets for that time, right? Like if your
Exactly.
schedule is relatively open, it's a great way to get tickets at a good price because some of those shows can be really expensive. I forget which one we were talking about, but there was the one that was Valentine's Day. It was like 5 times more expensive than any other
Eureka
ticket.
Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
My friend and
so
I saw it like the weekend before, a couple days before, and I think we saw it for like $45 a ticket. We were in the front row.
yeah, and then it was like $300 a ticket for Valentine's Day. I was like, damn.
There's shows right now, and I kid you not, Kevin, that like per seat are anywhere from like 700 to
Hmm.
$1,000.
Yeah,
Disgusting that people want to pay that much.
I can't imagine what's going to happen with Hamilton later this year when what's his name comes back.
When
Uh,
them on Miranda.
no,
Leslie Odom Jr.
there you go. But yeah, no, he's coming back. Like I think this fall.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so like that's a big deal, because he is, he's pretty talented and one of the originals. So I'm sure the prices will jack up a little in that time. So.
For sure.
Um,
I mean, I was talking to some of the girls that I went with this afternoon, and we were just saying it's becoming more popular to put big stars on Broadway now
yep.
than ever before. I mean, some of the high ticket priced shows right now are Othello with Denzel Washington and
Hmm.
Jake Gyllenhaal, and then I think it's like Good Night and Good Luck,
Yeah, with
something
Clooney.
like that with Clooney. It's just these are the tickets that are going for like seven, eight, $900. It's disgusting. And then you see people say, I can't make it anymore to these shows, and they're losing so much money.
Yeah, I the Good Night and Good Luck was kind of cool because his entire like not entire, but a majority of the ER cast that he did ER with showed up for his show one night. So that was kind of cool. Um,
Thanks.
but yeah, like it's cool that these guys are doing Broadway, and it's cool that they can get out there. But when the tickets start to get astronomical, it's kind of a waste of, um, a waste of an actor. Um, part of the fun of Broadway is discovering new people or people that um, wouldn't be seen otherwise. I
Agree.
remember they did Scarlet Pimpernel when that show came out 25 years ago, maybe more. It was Frank Wildhorn's follow up to Jekyll and Hyde, which is awesome. I love Jekyll and Hyde, but Scarlet Pimpernel was his next big musical, and Douglas Sills, I think was his name, was the guy that played the Scarlet Pimpernel. He was absolutely nobody. He came in, auditioned, got the part, had never been on Broadway at all, and all of a sudden he's in this, on Broadway show, and he was incredible. Like he was really, really talented. I don't know what happened to him after that, but it's really cool to see these guys that kind of come from nowhere and then blow up.
Right.
Um,
But Hugh
and
Jackman, unlike these other guys, like he's comes from a theater back, like an
yeah,
actual like
yeah.
theater background. I feel like he's musically talented, whereas like I don't know, seeing someone like George Clooney and Jake Gyllenhaal, I don't really care to see them on Broadway
Yeah, and
or
well, and they're not doing musicals, right? They're doing just stage plays,
plays, but
and
I don't know.
yeah, it's sort of a catch-22 because I feel like they have probably come from, doing theater in college, right? Like you don't start in movies and stuff, although Clooney was doing TV at 12 or something like that. I forget what he was on. He was on something pretty young. I'm sure Denzel was in something when he was pretty young, but like when you're young and going through stuff, you still do a lot of early stage or do stage early in your career. Um, so for some of these guys, I'm sure it's like a kind of a pipe dream to get back on to a stage and do that because it is completely different. It is a whole different animal to be on stage versus in a musical, or sorry, in a movie. Um, but at the same time, like it's not really fair to relive your dream and then charge everybody out the butt to go see you
Right,
just because you're, a huge deal. Like if Denzel Washington does a movie tomorrow, the ticket prices for the movie don't go up because it's a Denzel Washington movie. Theaters have a standard movie
right,
ticket price, right? So, yeah, it's a little tricky. Theaters have a little more freedom to charge whatever they want.
right. I
Or
was gonna
the
say, I don't know how much of that actually goes to like Denzel versus like the actual theater itself.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. I know, when I think about concerts, like the performer actually rents out the venue, so you pay a certain amount to the venue, and then you kind of set your own price for the tickets.
Right,
I don't know if that's the same thing in theater.
right,
Like if you say, we're going to put on a show, the theater's open, we pay X amount of dollars, or if
whatever
theaters
it
are big
is.
enough on Broadway now where they pick the shows and then, the
Mhm.
money gets worked out. I'm not sure. That'd be interesting to find out how that all works. But um, yeah, it's a business, you know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he was able to get Radio City Music Hall, so it's not like he performed this in an actual Broadway theater.
right,
This
and
is
I
where
mean, it's
people have
basically a
like
concert, right? I mean, he's really,
it felt like a concert, and we were able to have our phones out and videotape, on like Broadway shows you're not
oh
supposed to do.
yeah,
Whereas this, like everybody had their phone, not everybody, but it was encouraged to have your phones out and take pictures and videos. I have at least like 5 to 10 videos I took because I was like, oh, I love this song too. And then just like whip out my phone. And And of course, then I start recording because I'm like, childhood, or just I love him so much. But yeah, definitely. I thought it was worth it. But I think the seats that we sat in were like at least $300, but we paid like a third of that because we got upgraded. And I feel like it potentially could have been because it was a matinee and they just didn't sell out. So they're like,
Yeah.
here, take these.
Yeah, that happened especially for things where people are recording because they want it to look like the theater's full. So they will kind of try to move people forward, just so it looks more full than, having sparse seating around there. Um,
Yeah. Because there were some gaps we noticed, like as we're sitting there, we're like, this isn't filled. And then we noticed people like trickling in like a little bit later. And I'm like, they're definitely just going up to people, be like, you want to sit down in the orchestra?
yeah.
So,
And
which is kind of funny because I'm like, the person ahead of me could have like bought their tickets from scratch, $200, $300 a seat, knowing that I only paid like about 100.
yeah. Hey, you never don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right?
Right.
You take those seats and go. So
Oh, we were so excited. We're like, we're so close to Hugh. Like we were supposed to be way further away.
that's cool. And then you can see him sweat.
Yes, he's just
But
fantastic human. So
yeah,
yeah,
he's pretty awesome. So
for
that's
sure.
cool. So definitely worth the price of admission.
100%.
So all right, cool. All right, well then I will jump in, and we were hoping Andrew was going to be here this week because we had a few things to talk about with him, but we'll talk next week. But I'm not going to wait for him to talk about The Last of Us, which started last Sunday on HBO. Next episode's tomorrow night. I have to be really careful when I talk about it because I've played the games that it's based on, so I know things about what's coming, and some people that are watching the show haven't played the games and don't know what's coming and don't know some of the major things that are coming down the pipe in this season alone, let alone the next couple of seasons. So, um, on the one hand, I can make some guesses about how the season's going to go, knowing what's going to happen, but at the same time, I want to be a little cautious because I don't want to give away major plot points. Um, but so this was last week was the first episode of season two. Season two starts the adaptation of the second game, which they are doing, I think, 3 seasons of. So they're going to break this game into 3 seasons, where the first game was just one season. Season one was incredible. One of the better shows on television easily last year. Won a handful of awards at Globes, at Emmys, everything. It wasn't last year; it was 2 years ago, I think. And And so we start this season. This season kicks off exactly where the last season ended, like literally the same scene. They sort of replay that last scene. And so one of the criticisms that this season has received is that, for as great as Bella Ramsey is, when you make a 5 year time jump, she, just by the nature of looking so young naturally, doesn't look like she jumped ahead 5 years, even though even now she's playing a character that is younger than she is in real life. She still looks like she's 14 and the character is 19 at this point. So like that's kind of been a major criticism, but there's really not a way around it other than to recast, which doesn't really make sense either. To just try and cast somebody who looks older because you're really casting a 19-year-old. It's barely an adult. And people kind of forget this. In the game, it's a pretty significant visual change from 14 to 19, and you do that with a video game. And so people have been a little rough about that, and I kind of get it. Like I wish they had found a way to age her up a little bit because she really does look super young. So she plays a little younger. She's like sassy and she's got attitude and stuff, but it sort of plays like mouthy young teenager instead of, been through the shit 19-year-old who is now finding her way in the world. So for as much as she was in all the award buzz 2 years ago, we'll see how this season goes because that will probably play against her when people start talking about award buzz, even though she is a great actress and I think she's going to do great in the part. I think if there's going to be a knock, that'll be it for her. But anyways, it jumps in from exactly where the last season ends with a scene between her and Joel. It's very emotional. We're kind of left wondering what's in her head, and they still don't give us the answer to that. And they don't give us the answer to that for reasons that we'll should find out later in this season. Um, but they jump right ahead. So they jump ahead 5 years. Actually, before they do that, actually, they introduce a handful of new characters for just a second that we don't see for the rest of the episode. We meet a character named Abby, and then her group of people that are going to down the line become major antagonists for the season. But they are introduced now because of the events at the end of season one. And if you haven't seen season one, I'll spoil a little bit. There is there's a situation where Ellie is in trouble. They are trying to use her to find a cure, and the way to do that will potentially kill her. And Joel says, "No fucking way." Goes on a killing spree to break her out and kills a bunch of people. Well, as it turns out, one of the people that he killed, or a handful of the people that he killed, are part of a group called the Fireflies. And the doctor that he ultimately kills, his daughter is still alive, and her name is Abby. So this kind of second opening scene is her. She's just finished burying her dad. She is basically vowing revenge against Joel. And the last thing she says before they cut away and actually start the episode is she basically says, when we find him, I want to kill him slowly." He killed her dad, who she loves, and so uh, we know she's angry. But then it jumps ahead 5 years, and um, for whatever reason, again, we're not going to get explained a lot of this right away. I think it's going to come further in the show, but Joel and Ellie, who became very close in season one, are now kind of at odds. They have a father-daughter relationship, but that seems to be really strained right now. And again, we don't know why. And at one point, there's a scene that starts up, and somebody walks in and starts talking to Joel, and it's a girl, and it sounds like it's Ellie, and then they cut to it, and it's a girl named Dina, who is Ellie's best friend. And Dina is played by Isabella Merced, who is everywhere right now. She's kind of on the rise. She, funny enough, played Dora the Explorer in the live action Dora movie. But she's about to be in Superman, that's coming out in a couple months. She plays Hawk Girl in that. She's been in a handful of other things recently, but she's actually really talented, and she is arguably the best part of this first episode. Her character is just really charming, really sweet, but a little sassy and a little mouthy. And so her first interaction with Joel actually almost feels like she's his daughter. Like the way that he's communicating with her and she's communicating with him, like she's very receptive to talking to him and, taking in information from him. At the same time, after a couple minutes, she literally asks, she's like, "Well, why is Ellie mad at you?" And he's basically like, "Shit, I don't know." And so they have, this moment, and this whole like interaction between the two of them is actually something that was not originally in the game, but it's really sweet, and it sets up these two characters um, really well. And so, as the episode goes on, we find out that Joel has become basically a pretty important person in the town. Like he's helping to rebuild this town that it's called Jackson. And when they built it, technically it was built before the last series started. But it is a community that is walled. Like they built walls all the way around the town, and the people in town are keeping it protected from all the bad stuff outside. And Joel is kind of in charge of construction and a bunch of stuff because that's what he did before everything went sideways. And so this stuff's all going on. Dina and Ellie go out on patrol and they do some dumb stuff. They're cocky. They've been through a lot of people in this town um, have spent so much time in the town that they're very kind of leery of the things that are out there. And Ellie, for two reasons, really, is really cocky about uh, what she does outside of the town. Because number one, she's immune. If she gets bit by something, she won't turn into one of the infected. But nobody knows that about her because they're trying to keep that a secret because they're worried about what people would do or say to her, as evidenced by last season when they were willing to potentially kill her to try and see if they could create a cure from, you know, her blood or whatever. And so that's a big secret. Only Joel, her, and Tommy know. Tommy is Joel's brother. And so the other thing about Ellie is that she spent this whole last season traveling across the country, fighting these infected, surviving in a way that people that have lived inside the walls of Jackson for so long haven't experienced. So they're a lot more nervous, a lot more cautious, where she is not. And because Dina is her very good friend, and very spunky, she kind of has the same attitude. So they kind of on this patrol veer off and get themselves into a little bit of trouble, but ultimately survive. And in this, they kind of come across this new form of infected that seems to be smarter than the other versions. So, it's more of a hint at what's to come, I think. As the season goes on, it's one little fight with one infected, and that's it. So it's not hugely critical to anything at the moment, but I think it will be as the show goes on. And they come back to town, they kind of get bitched at, and then they go to this party, which is the party behind me. And Dina's dancing around. She has just broken up with her boyfriend, which we find out a little earlier in the episode. And once Ellie shows up, she grabs Ellie, pulls her onto the dance floor, and they start dancing. And they kind of have a moment when you realize we've known since middle of last season that Ellie's gay. She likes girls. She has a relationship with a girl. In the first show, they hint at how she had a girlfriend at one point in Jackson. There's a funny line about where Dina's talking to her, and she's like, "Oh, are you going to the dance tonight with Kat?" And she's like, "No." She's like, "Why do you ask?" And she's like, "Well, you're the only two, kind of hinting they're the only two that like, girls." And it's a funny moment, and so these two are at the dance, and uh, Dina very aggressive isn't quite the word, but she's very forward, and she ultimately kisses Ellie, and then Ellie kisses her back, and they have a moment, and you can tell there's a spark there. The chemistry between the two actors is great. They actually play it perfectly. Like this. This is one of the few scenes in the show, and even in last season, this one is almost shot for shot from the game. Like they recreate it almost perfectly. And then some. There's a drunk, very you can tell very, I don't know, Catholic thinking dude at the thing that gets all up in their face for, kissing at this party and says it's a family event, and then they start to walk away, and he says something, and he calls them dykes. And so Ellie kind of turns around, she's ready to get up in his face, and Joel shows up and just shoves this dude to the ground. And then this is a moment where you can kind of see this tension that has started to grow between Ellie and Joel, because Ellie rips him apart for getting involved in this kind of altercation because, she wants to be more independent. And she is upset with him for reasons, again, that we don't know just yet. And I believe that we'll find those out in the next, I bet we probably don't figure that out until the third or fourth episode, but it there are reasons for their tension. And so her and Dina kind of stomp out, And then the show starts to come to an end where there's some um, Ellie walks past Joel and Joel's sitting on the porch and they have a look, but they don't talk. And then she goes into her room. There's some discussion about how they're going to have patrol the next day. And the last shot of the episode is up in the mountains overlooking the town. Abby and her friends show up, and Abby is the one that is out looking for Joel. So the implication is that after 5 years, she's finally found Joel, and she's coming for him, and she wants to kill him slowly. And that's where the episode ends. In a lot of ways, the episode is a little slower than some of the other episodes from last year or last season, but it's really solid. They introduce a new character in I think her name is Gail. I forget now, but she's a therapist played by Catherine O'Hara from Schitt's Creek and every other damn thing ever. She's amazing. Um, and it's a really interesting role for her because she is not funny. Like it's a very serious role for Catherine O'Hara, who is generally hilarious. And as they start to go through this therapy session that she's sitting down and having with Joel, she's having a really bad day, and it turns out her day is not going the way she wanted it to, because it's her first birthday without her husband, Eugene. And what we come to find out as she starts talking to Joel, she's kind of being aggressive towards him, and you can't really tell why. Well, it turns out Joel killed her husband because he got infected and somebody had to kill him, and Joel did it. And so there's a lot of tension there. But she plays this therapist part really well, especially as a therapist who's a little broken right now. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see. Like, she's the only therapist in town. She's got this job to do, but it's not always easy, right? Like, you've
I
got
have
to,
a question.
uh
What is making everyone sick, like what type of
So what's really cool is in the first season, they do a great job explaining it in a way that they never did in the game. In the game, it just happens. It's a fungus. It's called cordyceps, and it's a real fungus that exists in ants and other insects. So if you look up the cordyceps fungus in ants, it is a fungus that attacks the brain of insects and it effectively takes over the body of that insect and starts to use them to propagate that fungus to more and more things. Right. And so the actual opening scene of the first season is something that was never in the games. And it's a scientific panel in like the 70s. And one guy is talking about how, airborne viruses are going to be the worst things for people and blah, blah, blah. And this one guy says, well, fungi are probably the worst thing that could happen to people. And he talks about the cordyceps virus and he says the reason that that people can't get infected with the cordyceps virus right now is because we're warm-blooded creatures, right? Our body temperature is 98 degrees. And because the earth in general is cooler than that, this fungus has not adapted to be able to sustain itself in the temperatures of the human body. But he points out, he's like, well, what if the earth got hotter? Kind of talking about global warming and hinting at, global warming down the line. So now some years later, uh, this virus or this fungus has adapted itself. And what we come to find out the uh, in the first season is, I think you have to pay a little attention to it. I don't think it's 100% clear, but it found itself into wheat, into like a wheat factory, I think in China, and then was distributed. And because it was able to live in wheat, it all got kind of distributed at once. And so people made their pancakes, made their bread, made all the stuff that they make with flour, and all of a sudden it just kind of erupts. Like it was just and then it spreads really easily because once it's a fungus inside people, if they bite someone or bleed on someone or anything that any kind of contact,
feces
yeah,
or yeah.
you get infected. And there's a cool moment in this episode. Ellie actually gets bit again for like the fifth time by one of these things. And you can see in the bite marks around her because they punctured her skin, you can see a little tendril of the fungus inside there, even though it can't do anything to her, you can still see it trying. So you can see how if somebody else got bit, this thing would get into the blood and then start, working its way through. So it's a really cool take on kind of the zombie genre because it's something that is arguably more real than any other zombie outbreak you'll hear about in most cases. Because this thing does exist. It just happens to not exist in people right now or mammals in general, I don't think. I think it's restricted to insects at this time. But yeah, so that's what's got everybody infected, and it infected a lot of people, and then as because it initially makes people more aggressive when they get infected, it spreads faster, right? Because people, if you've ever seen people that are high on like PCP or something like that, when you shift something in your body, it's like superhuman strength just by sheer adrenaline and craziness because either you don't feel pain or you don't care that you feel pain or something like that. So those things are very real and makes for in a way a scarier show. Now the stuff that once you see the infected and things like that, they're definitely I don't know if unrealistic looking is the way to go, but they're more extreme versions of this cordyceps virus. Like if you look at pictures of the ants that are infected, they literally have like tendrils of fungus just coming off of them. They look like they should be dead, but they're not. They're moving around and doing stuff. It's a real trip. Like it's really crazy that this is a real thing. But yeah, so this season, the first episode was pretty solid. I don't know what it got on IMDb. I haven't looked that up. Like I said, it felt a little slower than some of the other um, episodes from last season, but it's definitely setting up a lot, and I think it did a really good job of that. Um, getting to meet Abby. Some people are kind of upset because I think we didn't get a real introduction to Abby and just why she's so angry um, in the game until a little later, and they're basically handing us Abby's, reason for being angry right out of the gate. Yeah, okay, yeah. This episode for sure is like lower rated than some of the other ones. It's only 7.5. Um, some of that um, could come out of, now that this thing is established and it's been out for a while. Not that it's going to get review bombed, but I think it's going to be um, critiqued harder than it was before. There's a lot of things about the second game
Sure.
that people just couldn't handle. And some of those things have changed. Like one of the characters, Abby, in the game is she's just ripped. Like she is big. Like she's a very big, strong girl, and a lot of people thought that she was a lesbian, and so that just pissed people off. And even though Ellie was in the first game, like they talk about it in the first game, um, but it
The
pissed people
season
off.
aligns with its respective game. So what
Yeah, yeah, and so people were critical of that, and then people were critical of a few other things, and there were a lot of leaks around the game that shouldn't have been leaked, and so people knew things that were going to happen, and they got mad about that without experiencing it. Um, And so, the longer something's around, I think the more susceptible it becomes to criticism.
totally.
But I do think some of the criticisms for this episode are fair. It's more of a setup episode than an action episode, even though there's a couple of moments in there. And I think we'll be fine. The next episode is supposed to be one of the best episodes of the entire show from people that have watched it, around. So it should be very exciting. It's going to be high energy, one of the highest death tolls from what I've seen in any episode. One of the complaints last season is that there weren't enough infected in the actual show. Like they were more they were more an ancillary threat. Like we didn't really see people dealing with them a lot. They definitely did sometimes, but it was more like it was almost like The Walking Dead's first season where people are the real problem. Like the people you have to deal with are what you have to worry about, not necessarily the infected, even though those things are also bad. And this season, it seems like they're kind of committed to making sure that we remember why this whole thing started.
Let
And
me ask you,
so
when did the game come out?
the first game came out in 2013.
Okay.
The second game came out. Did it come out in 2020? 2019, I think, something like that. 2019, 2020. It might have come out before COVID. But it's been out for a while. So, this is the other trick with this season. Like, if you start the show and you get into the show at season one, it's you got to be really careful when you go to look up information about the show because you don't want to get spoilers because they're out there. Like the whole plot of this thing exists.
Right. And there's
It,
two games, or how many games are there?
there's two. There's only two. They One of the things that also once the game had been out kind of infuriated people was that the ending of the game is very divisive because of the second game is very divisive because people wanted to be able to make a choice at the end of the game because something goes down that I won't spoil for anybody, but people really wanted to be able to choose what they do, and that's not the game that was created here. You're experiencing a story that is told very specifically, and people were really bothered about the decision that was made at the end of the game. But Neil Druckmann, the guy that created the game, stands by it. And for me, it was the right decision. I know um, Alex, who has been on our show many times and is a huge Last of Us fan, one of the original members of All Pop No Culture. He's a huge Last of Us fan, and he had a lot of issues with the second game, even though he loves the characters in the franchise and played the game. He's not a huge fan of the ending, but it is what it is. But yeah, it's this season is going to be really intense. The next episode should be pretty crazy. They're not even releasing episode titles at this point on IMDb. So the next episode's called Through the Valley. But other than a few screenshots and stuff, we don't really know what's going to go down. It seems like this is an episode that is actually a little different from the game in that it seems like a huge horde of infected is going to attack Jackson in some way. And that did not happen in the game. And so, there's a little change here. There's lots of changes here and there. But this one is supposed to be a pretty solid and emotional episode. So it'll be really good. So yeah, I'm excited for all this. And I think, oh, and the other thing, Abby, even though she's only introduced for a few moments, she's played by Caitlin Dever, who is a phenomenally talented actress. She's great, even though she's physically very different than the Abby that we had in the game. Like I said, the Abby in the game she was a bodybuilder. I mean, she was very, very like buff, and Caitlin Dever is a lean little thing. But she plays attitude really well. I remember the first thing I saw her in was Tim Allen had a sitcom, maybe not the one he's doing right now, but it might have been the one right before that. And she played one of his daughters, and I thought she was just great. Like she just had a little bit of attitude, and she was great in that. And then I started seeing her in a bunch of other stuff. And she's ridiculously talented. I think she's perfect for the part, even though she's physically different than the character. I think she's going to do really, really well because she does intense really well. She was in actually, I should mention it because it's worth people watching. Let's see. She was in a film with Merritt, or no, she was in a series with Merritt Weaver. Oh, she was one of the main characters in Booksmart too, which people loved.
I saw her
Uh,
in book. That's how I
yeah,
know
yeah,
her.
yeah. She was really good in that. The show I'm talking about is called Unbelievable. It was a miniseries with Tony Collette and Merritt Weaver. and Tony Collette and Merritt Wever are cops. And Caitlin Deaver was assaulted, and they don't necessarily believe her story, and so the whole like she's charged with lying about being raped, and so their whole thing is trying to prove that she's not lying. And she's amazing in it because she is very broken and very sad. You know, I mean, as you would expect somebody to be in that situation. Um, and it's a fantastic show. I think it was on Netflix. Worth a watch if you're looking for something that's really solid and intense, and if you want to see some of her stuff. She's also she just did Apple Cider Vinegar, which I think is on Netflix also. But she's crazy talented. So I'm really excited for the season. A friend of mine I have a debate with about a major event from the game that happens relatively early. We're trying to. I told her I think it would be the season finale. She thinks it'll be closer to the third episode. And after seeing some things that are happening in episode two, I'm really worried that she might be right and I might be wrong. But I'm hoping not, but we'll see. But yeah, all in all, is the season, even though it's a slower start, like I said, I probably wouldn't give it a 7.5, but it's certainly not as exciting as some of the episodes from last season. So I think that probably hurts the overall rating, right? Like when you're used to it being here and it comes in here, you're going to rate it here because,
Or
it's just not
lowers your
as,
expectations.
yeah, exactly. So we'll, we'll see where it goes. Like I said, the next episode's supposed to be incredible from everything I've seen. So I'm excited to see that, and we'll go from there. So next week, if Andrew's back and he watches it, we'll talk more about it and see what shakes.
Cool.
So cool. So that's The Last of Us. Go watch it if you have HBO. If you haven't watched the first season, start there. Obviously, first season is 8 episodes, I think. Goes pretty quick. They're only an hour long. And then we're one episode into the season. So, all right, cool. Well, then you have Netflix, right? Love on the Spectrum is on Netflix.
From season three just
Yeah.
came out a few weeks ago. I love the show. I've been watching it for at least a year or two now. It started off in Australia, where I believe they have two seasons of that. And then they came to America, and they're now on season three, which is a real joy to watch to see people in our own country that live with different types of autism, because autism doesn't look the same from one person to another. Autism can present itself very differently when it comes to day-to-day functions for certain well, I shouldn't say characters, but certain people who they showed their life through the show. There were a few returning. The most, I guess, well-known couple success story are Abby and David. And Abby, I believe, is in, I think, California. She's like in her mid-20s, and she meets David in season one. And at this point, they're like already dating like 3 years. They end up going to Africa together last season. They both love The Lion King and Disney and anything to do with animals. I think their first date was like going to a zoo. So they got to talk about animals together. And then you get to meet two returning, like major, well, three actually major characters. You have Tanner, who's like from, I think, like Greenville, South Carolina. He's like a Southern gentleman and he just wants to find love too. And he works at a hotel that employs people that have autism. So that's pretty interesting. And he goes on, I think, two different dates. And the second one goes very well. And I think he dated this person for a few months. They're no longer together, but he's a real joy to watch. And then Connor, who he's somewhere else. I think he's in Georgia. And Connor's really into swords and medieval history. And he's just very nerdy and such. And he experiences his first kiss this season and finds love with this girl named Georgie who's also on the spectrum, so that's pretty cool. The way that they pair these dates, and it's really cool how they find people within their area also with autism, and they'll before you meet the person, they'll say like, "This is Connor. Connor likes," and like things that Connor likes, and then things that Connor does not like, or that that person that they're introducing doesn't like, and these are usually like very distinct things, like the sound of chewing bubble gum, or they don't like spiders. They don't like nails on a chalkboard. They don't like the sound of trains. Just something very specific, but that really, I think, irks that person. As we know, people with autism have some very severe, well, I shouldn't say severe, but very distinct things that make them the way that they are.
Hmm.
And when something irritates someone with autism, it not doesn't just like irritate them slightly. It's very much so apparent when someone's, annoyed or frustrated. And I think also, you know, conversely, when they love something, they're head over heels
Hmm.
about it, very focused on it. You meet a new character who I love. She's so sweet. Her name is Madison. She's in Florida, and she is mid late 20s, and she loves dolls. Loves dolls. She's got the whole, and I was like, as she's going through this, I was like, how am I not friends with her? Not that I have well, they're at my parents' house, but not that I'm like playing with dolls in my 30s, but just the stuff I loved in childhood. I'm like, this girl would have been my friend years ago, you know? And she just seems so fascinating and social, and she loves The Bachelor and like a lot of stuff that I feel like girls in their 20s and 30s really like. She's a big part of her church, and she loves being social, but she also has like these very young girl tendencies where she brings her well, I should say Barbie dolls, but her dolls with her out, like to restaurants to go out to eat. And then she's really into the American Girl dolls, and she's just very sweet, but also has like a very childlike type of persona to her where she has like sparkly eyeshadow. It's like, that's something that maybe little girls are into, and a ton of bracelets going halfway down her arm. But she goes on a date with a guy named Tyler. I think it's her second person that they put her on a date with. And they have this coach, forgot her name, but she meets up with these people who also has autism, and she coaches the main characters on the show on just how they can really refine their skill sets and be able to go into the dating world. And one of the things that Madison brings up is, I really like to have dolls with me. She's like, okay, you can choose two dolls, but you have to put them in your purse, like while you're out. You can't like play with the dolls while you're on the date, which is kind of like silly to think because it's like she actually going to take the dolls out and start playing house or whatever like during the date. But no, like I think it's more of just like a comfort thing for
Hmm.
her.
Yep.
So, but that was fascinating. But she ended up meeting a guy who's like a cowboy who loves Southern music and is a DJ and also works within the community, loves the church and loves volunteering within the autism community, just like Madison does. And they're still dating to this day, and they're super cute. And you watch her have her first kiss with him, and it's not even just like a little kiss, they're like beyond passionate. And then like she introduces the new guy to her parents, and they're like all over each other on the cat, like way too much so where the parents are like, okay, this is uncomfortable. And you could tell, certain social cues like, hey, you shouldn't be making out in front of your parents, like that's definitely a no-no, and that's happening.
Yeah.
So, and they have a couple of other characters. They have James, who is like in his late 30s, and he loves like medieval warfare and stuff, and he's very intense and talks incredibly fast where you can't get in like a word edgewise. And he ends up meeting someone online who I believe is on the spectrum too, and they're together now. But I feel like he got a big fan base with like women just reaching out to him through social media because he's been on for 3 seasons now. But his parents will like ask random questions, and he gets so pissed off when they ask him stuff like, hey, why don't you get a haircut? Because his hair's so long. He's like, Mom, like he kind of reminds me of Napoleon Dynamite. and just how he speaks and how he gets like frustrated over like little things, and then like will like throw not like yeah like sort of like little fits too. It's just like okay, but it is very nice to see these people get set up and meet individuals that complement them and can relate to their day-to-day tendencies and just functionalities. And even though they might be slightly different, I think there's just like an understanding and calmness when you can look inward, but also be able to see a lot of yourself in somebody else.
Hmm. Do they talk about like where they are on the spectrum? Like some people could be Asperger's, some people could be, just ADD or whatever.
They won't say like where on the spectrum, but all these people are fairly high functioning. Some live
Mm,
on their own. Tanner lives in like a group home with two other gentlemen that are also on the spectrum. Most of them live with their parents, but they're all communicative.
mm,
They don't have people that can't communicate on the show. So I see most of them as like pretty, I don't want to
yeah,
say super high functioning, but functioning enough where it's like, okay, they can actually go on dates.
yeah. Autism is really interesting because I think people generally don't understand it. Like I think there's still a lot of people that think everybody with autism is Rain Man, right? Like
Totally. And
you
it's
know,
not
and
me.
and it's not like so.
Right.
My middle son was diagnosed with autism at 2 years old because he didn't talk, he didn't speak, he just kind of grunted and pointed at things. Um, you would never know now. He gets pissed if you bring it up. He wants to stay, just chew you out if you bring it up. We tease him about it more than anything. Um, and literally like, but his entire life he's had what's called an IEP, which means somebody works with you on your education program and they help you out. His is primarily because he his spot on the spectrum is essentially ADD, right? So all those other things have kind of gone away, but over the years that that he was still considered autistic, um, we got to see a lot of people that were all over the spectrum.
Totally.
Because I think at 3 years old, maybe it was four, he started to go to a regional center, which means he was in school from 8 to 5 every day because he would go there, they would teach him, they would work on speech, they'd work on all these things that he was kind of delayed in, which is crazy because he doesn't shut up now. Like he's very smart, but he's kind of the same way. Like some of these people still like even those little things are there. Like he can like football, he knows everything about football. Like that's his thing. Um, he is somebody that is very worried about appearance. Like he's got to look good. He's works out, all this stuff. Um, but like I said, you can see these tendencies, you can see these things that these other people would have. And for them to, and this is the thing too, for them to be on the show where they're trying to kind of highlight this, they're going to pick people that are more extreme than not, right? Like they want to find people that make this thing interesting while not being totally exploitative, right?
Right.
And I think that's really interesting. I think it's really fascinating to see something like that because it's eye-opening, because I think we literally had someone in one of our highest offices say that autistic people were never going to be able to go to the bathroom by themselves. And I'm like, what? You don't know what you're talking about. Like there are many, many, many people from, that are autistic and you can't tell. Like Asperger's is one of those ones where it's, depending on where you're at with Asperger's, like you can maybe just people just think you're a little weird, like, and otherwise you're perfectly normal. Like my son will end up living on his own. Like he'll just be out there in the world, living on his own, doing his own thing. Um, but there's definitely people that need a community. There's definitely people that will probably live with their parents, and these things, but they can still go out and have jobs. They can still go out and do all these things. So I think it's pretty cool to see how they deal with that on the show.
For sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like a fun one. It's almost while it's a little bit of a dating show, it's probably pretty educational too, I would think.
For
Like
sure.
yeah. Um,
You learn how these people think a little bit and just how their parents have been able to work with them and have seen major strides in their own kids
mhm.
over the years.
Yeah, yeah, it I feel like people wouldn't know until it happens, but like I remember, like I said, my son used to just kind of point and grunt at things for a long time. But you could tell like he was smart, like he was doing the work in his head. The words just wouldn't come.
No, yeah,
And for the first, once we got the diagnosis for the first year, I think someone was in our home every day for 4 hours working with him, and then all of a sudden, speech was coming, and that feels like a huge milestone. And then then he's in school with an aide, and that's a huge milestone. And then all of a sudden he's talking to people on his own and making friends and doing all this stuff. And so yeah, all those milestones are pretty incredible.
right.
Um, and like I said, what I went through with him is so much less than so many other people would go through. Um, because now he's effectively just ADD and we're treating that. So he just seems, a little hyperactive and kind of a pain in the ass. But he's also 15 or no, he's 16 now. And you know what? 16-year-olds are a pain in the ass. So, it's pretty wild. And yeah, it definitely, I follow a few people that are, autistic parents on Instagram and stuff like that. And, you can see how hard it is. And also um, how proud they are of the achievements they take. There was actually, it's different, but Colin Farrell, there was just an article about him today. I think it was today or yesterday. Um, his son was born with something at birth, anyways, or at young ages, gets confused with cerebral palsy. It's got a name. It's like Angel something syndrome. Angel, I can't remember what it's called. But he's made the decision to put his son in a home. His son's 21. Um, and he's like, look, I want to make sure that my son is set up for success if something happens to me. He's like, if his son's 21 and he's taking care of his son, and he and his wife or ex-wife, I can't remember, if they were to just die tomorrow, like they're driving somewhere, they get hit by a truck and they die, but the son is still alive, all of a sudden, even at 21, he becomes a ward of the state with no help.
Right.
And then it's up to people that don't know him or care about him to figure out a situation. And so what Colin Farrell can do in this situation is put him into a community, a home that deals with this stuff and will work with him. And then, he can come visit whenever he wants. And they're looking for a place that, he and his wife can show up and take him out
Right.
for the weekend or do whatever they want. Um, but still have him constantly supervised and have it set up so that should something terrible happen to the two of them, he will continue to get the same care in the same world that he's now become accustomed to with the people that he's accustomed to. So, those things are really important. And he's fortunately got, compared to a lot of us, all the money in the world, right? He can make this stuff happen, but he's also cares enough to go out and create. He's got, I think it's just called the Colin Farrell Foundation, but it's for parents of kids with disabilities and things like that. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, especially the more complex the disability is, the more work it is. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it sounds like I'm not really a dating show guy unless it's something really stupid like Love Island.
Yeah, it's
That's
not. It's not
yeah,
like
it's 100% not. Which makes me laugh. So they just not the tangent, but they just decided they're going to make a spin-off of Love Island that follows some of the people around from last season of US Love Island USA. And I'm like, I don't care. I was like, I just want the stupid show when they're in the villa doing their dumb shit. That's all I want to see. Once they leave, I don't, I keep an eye on them, see who makes it, who doesn't, because some do, but like I don't get too like invested. Like I don't want to watch a whole show about them being like
Right.
the Kardashians, you know? I just want to see the dumb dating stuff in the house. But yeah, so Love on the Spectrum seems like it's a little smarter than that, or a lot of smarter than that, and probably pretty fascinating.
Yeah, definitely fascinating for sure. And I mean, a lot of these people are now becoming like product influencers and stuff. So
Hmm.
I think it's opening doors for them to make money, which
Hmm.
is great.
Yeah, the only the only thing you got to worry about there is make sure that the people that are doing it with them and for them have their best interests at heart, because
Right.
people will
No,
take
like
advantage.
Macaulay Culkin type of
Yeah,
hair.
yeah, yeah. So as long as they got the right people, that should be pretty awesome. So
Sure.
cool. All right. Well, the last thing I've got, I watched tonight. There's a movie that came out earlier this year called The Wolfman, or just Wolfman. And there's no the. And it stars the biggest name in it is the girl who's now playing the Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four movie coming out. She was in Ozark. I knew her name 10
Julia
minutes.
Garner.
Garner? Yeah. Yeah, Julia Garner. Um, she's on the rise right now too. Like she's getting a bunch of stuff and she's getting bigger. She's probably the biggest name in this one. Um, and it was made by the person that did the Invisible Man, which was supposed to be. I need to go watch that one. It's out there somewhere. It's supposed to be one of the better horror films of the last like decade. And that one stars The Handmaid's Tale. What's her name? Apparently, I don't know names after midnight. Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah, Elizabeth
Um,
Moss.
it stars Elizabeth Moss, and it's supposed to be really good. And so this was by the same people. And it's sort of, I think it's supposed to be kind of a heady ta take on the Wolfman story. And so the gist of it is it starts off, there's a young boy and he's out hunting with his dad. His dad is very domineering and controlling and a little, I wouldn't say like, at least not physically abusive, but definitely he's not as kind as he should be verbally. Um, and so he's not great to his son, but they go out hunting. They see this thing in the woods, and he's talking about tracking it and going out hunting. And then we skip ahead, like it seems like almost 30 years, probably 20 years. Um, and this kid's all grown up now. The kid that had been on the hunting trip, he's got his own daughter who he's very protective of, and a few times he gets a little over aggressive with how protective of her he is, and it scares her a little bit. And you see that's like what they're trying to set up and what they're trying to show is that some of this stuff is generational, right? It's not as extreme as like abuse in this story, but like just that some of these things, these aggressions and things like that are definitely handed down one way or another. And so, he comes home, his wife comes home, she's Julia Garner, and he gets a letter saying that his dad's been missing for long enough in Oregon that they've declared him dead. And so he's inherited his dad's property. And this old property that he grew up on has this view of this beautiful valley, but it's also there's a rundown farmhouse that he grew up in that his dad owns. And, his dad wasn't the best. So there's like mixed emotions about this place, but, they're living in the city and they want to go check it out and do all that. So they pack up some stuff and they head out to the farmhouse. And on the way there, they run into a guy that he knew as a kid, who offers to give them directions to the farmhouse because it's been so long that he doesn't really remember the way there. And on the way to the farmhouse, all of a sudden something appears in front of them in the road. He swerves. There's a big fat accident. They crash the truck, and they watch the guy that they were with get taken by. You don't really see this thing, but you can tell it's inhuman, And as it's attacking the truck and the remainder of the folks in the truck, our main character gets scratched by whatever it is that's attacking them. And that begins his transformation into a wolf man. It's not a werewolf as we're traditionally used to. It's certainly um, in with regards to the transformation from, man to wolf man, whatever. Um, it's definitely kind of a body horror film in that way. Like his
Right.
body starts to transform over time. His skin starts to change. His teeth starts to change. His eyes change.
Mhm.
They do a good job kind of showing how you could, if this were to happen to you, how you would go from, a normal caring family man to a monster, because they show it from his point of view for a while, and you can see that he's starting to no longer understand what people are saying. Like that communication center of his brain starts to become more animalistic, and he loses that ability to understand speech. And so as the movie goes on, it's a really good, like tight, claustrophobic kind of horror film because they no longer have a vehicle. So they're at this farmhouse that his dad owns. They've made it there, but they're stuck in the farmhouse with the guy that was the main character, and he's starting to turn into a monster. So now you just have the mom, Julia Garner, and the daughter, um, and they are outside. You have a full-fledged monster that wants in and wants to kill you, and they're watching their husband and father start to turn into a monster in front of their eyes in the same place that they are. So it's kind of like an attack on two fronts. And as the movie goes on, and I'm just going to spoil it because it's been out for a while. As the movie goes on, the dad starts to change more and more and more. This is not something that he can fight. It's not something that he can change. This is for the purpose of whatever this change is unstoppable and it's natural. And so the other monster comes breaking into the house, and the dad has just enough of himself left to realize that he should protect his wife and daughter from this other monster, which he fights and kills. And in that process, we learn that that's his dad. So at some point, his dad went out into the woods hunting for the wolf man and inadvertently became the wolf man in the same way that, this guy has become the wolf man. And so after that happens, it then becomes the mom and the daughter running from the husband because he is succumbing to this this rage. And it's very kind of metaphorical. Like the whole wolfman aggression thing is a metaphor for him passing on just general aggression towards his daughter, not necessarily aggression, but just aggression to the world around him about his daughter, I guess. Like he's overprotective and a little domineering and all that. But ultimately, they try and run. They get to this hunting blind and they climb up and they're in there. And, they're both terrified and the mom doesn't know what to do. She's got a rifle, but she doesn't want to shoot her husband. And the little girl points out, she's like, this is not who, my dad is. He's in pain. He wouldn't want to hurt us. He wouldn't want to be this thing. And so when he comes up, the mom ultimately shoots and kills him, kind of ending the cycle here. Oh, and another thing that was kind of important early in the movie, the dad and the daughter are very close. They share all of their time together because he's a writer, but he writes from home. He's a novelist and he writes from home. So he spends all of his time with the daughter. They're very close. The mom is a journalist who spends time at the office, and her relationship with the daughter is just distant and kind of strained, right? Um, she loves her daughter. She just doesn't connect with her in the same way that the dad does. At the end of the movie, after after they've, killed the father and they don't have a car, so they're trying to walk to escape. They come to this place that is what the son described earlier in the movie as this beautiful valley. And so the last shot is them, holding hands, and the mom and the daughter now have a reason to be closer. They're in this peaceful, beautiful place, and it's sort of like a metaphor for them being able to move on and move forward. So it's very, while it's a horror movie, it's very artistic. I wouldn't put it on the level of something like Midsummer in that regard. Um, and in a lot of ways, there's a lot of parts of it they're kind of slow and boring. Um, but it's not a bad movie. I think, I'd give it like a 6 or a 7.
Sure.
Um, Horror movies are always a trip to me because um, I think they should really, if they don't scare you, they should make you uncomfortable and they should stick with you afterwards. And I don't think this one necessarily does that. It is very smart. It's very, like I said, very metaphorical in that regard. And I think the acting is really good. Like overall, even the little girl, she's probably 9 or 10, maybe. Um, she's really good. Julia Garner, we've seen her come up from Ozark. She's great. And the dad, even though I can't remember the actor's name, I've seen him in a couple of things. Um, and he does a really good job. So, for what it is, it's a pretty solid movie. I think there's better horror movies out there, but at the same time, I don't know that there's a better werewolf movie out there necessarily. You could probably get away with the original American Werewolf in London, or something like that. But generally speaking, it's a genre that kind of comes off a little corny a lot of times. I mean, you watch Teen Wolf, not to say that that was corny, but like that was actually one of the more successful like kind of werewolf franchises. Vampires always kind of get the love for whatever reason. Um, but werewolves a lot of the time,
Teen Wolf's different though because it's like during the day. I mean, did they touch upon what happens during the? He's just always a wolf man, regardless. Now he can't turn
he
back human.
he always is. And so the majority of this story, once it's the family, takes place essentially over one night. So all this stuff goes down in one night. But we do see in the beginning when the son is out with the dad, before the dad has become a wolf man, they're out hunting and he sees in his sights, he sees this thing out there during the day when they're out hunting. So we know this thing can be out during the day. So it's not something that you change back and forth on.
Right,
Um,
like with Teen Wolf, he
yeah.
can.
Yeah. And so once you become this thing, you're just a monster out in the woods
Right,
living. That's why his dad was considered gone, like or considered missing for so long, that he was out there as kind of a monster in the woods. And so yeah, it doesn't have that bit of a storyline like in a lot of werewolf stories. It's the full moon, right? If it's you turn on the full moon, otherwise you're fine, right? And
right.
the original Teen Wolf, the movie with Michael J. Fox, I think that's when he first changes a full moon. But I think as that movie goes, I think he can control it as the movie goes on.
That's
Um,
like with Teen Wolf, he learns how to
yeah,
control it.
yeah. Um, so it's definitely like I feel like generally speaking, vampire lore has been out there for so long and done so many times that there's sort of a specific subset of rules that they all follow unless you're Twilight and then you do weird shit. But you know, werewolves get a little touchier because there's just not a lot of werewolf stories out there
Right,
in the lore. So it was a cool take on it. Um, and like I said, it definitely had moments of tension for sure. And the body horror of aspect of it was definitely, creepy, especially at the very end when he goes, full change. Like you see his fingernails come off and claws start coming out and all this stuff. Um, but, uh, but yeah, otherwise it's sort of just a medium horror film, but it's smarter than your regular or than your average horror film. So in that regard, I think it's actually pretty solid. So yeah, I mean, I'd probably give it a 6 or a 7 and say watch it if that stuff's your cup of tea. Um, but yeah, It's on. Sorry, I didn't even say it's on Max right now. I think it came out at the beginning of this year, so I think it's still technically a 2025 film. Um, Speaking of Max, for next week, I'm hoping to remember to watch. There's a movie called Companion that came out a little bit ago. It stars Dennis Quaid's son. He's on The Boys, Jack Quaid,
Exactly.
and then Sophie Thatcher, where she plays a robot. And she doesn't know she's a robot, and she lives in his house, and he tells her, and then she goes crazy. It looks like a lot of fun, and I've been meaning to try and find it.
Not like earlier this year. I've
Yeah,
heard
like
good.
not long ago at all. So the fact that it's on HBO now, I'm really excited. I was actually considering renting it like last week, so the fact that it's out there for free is pretty cool. So I'm going to try and watch that one for next week. There'll be more Last of Us. Hopefully, Andrew is back because we want to talk about adolescence
Yep.
and get his take on that. I think he was only 2 episodes in last time I talked to him, so he's still got a little ways to go there. Um, and then I don't know whatever else comes out. Um, Next week and the following week, I don't know of a lot that's coming, but I know May 2nd, the Thunderbolts comes out. Me and my family will definitely see that. So we'll have that to talk about at some point soon. But The Last of Us will get more interesting. And yeah, you got anything else lined up for next week that you can think of?
I want to watch more Black Mirror.
Yes, yes, that'll be a good one too, especially if Andrew's back. Because I made it all the way to the second to last episode, which is Eulogy. And I really liked it, but I was tired, so I fell asleep before it was over. So I need to go finish that one. That's the one with Paul Giamatti. And
Yeah,
then
I just watched the first episode after you guys talked about it last weekend, and yeah, I liked it a lot.
it was really good. It was really good. Like it's sad, like it's heavy for
Oh,
sure.
sad.
I think the next two are not that heavy. Then the one that comes after that, Hotel Reverie is one of them, and something noir. It's like
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching them though, so I think that's going to be a lot of my focus the next.
yeah, that those are all really good. So those will be fun to talk about. I did go back and rewatch the first USS Callister episode, so I remembered
Oh,
everything that
as a like a
happened because
refresher.
yeah,
Yeah,
because the last episode of this season is another USS
like a part
Callister
two.
episode. Yeah,
Cool. Very cool.
so that's good stuff. So that's definitely worth watching. I think based on what I watched though, the first episode's by far the most bleak. The rest of them are less heavy.
Right.
Eulogy might be a little heavy there by the end. I'm not 100% sure on that one. And we'll see what
There's
happens
six
at
this season or eight?
seven, I think.
Seven. Okay.
6 or 7.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, I have a lot to catch up on then.
yeah. Yeah. Generally speaking, they're about an hour. I think the USS Callister one's a little longer.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
but otherwise, they're relatively reasonable in length. So
Nice.
cool. All right then. So with that, I will say to everyone watching or listening, thank you for watching or listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.